about being a little old. Of course, I'm glad that Gurley's in the race. I really don't feel too old. I have to admit, when I first went down to file my papers, I thought, I don't know if the body can stand this, or the mind can stand this, but when I found out Gurley was in the race, I said, Lord, I'm a young man. I love you, Gurley. Here's a little present. My wife even dressed it up a little bit, but it's to you folks here at the ladies' organization, and I think you'll like it because it happens to be a video that I worked many hours on the other night to get it ready for you, of Senator Jim Bunning, his final speech. And I went in and did a little story on all of his baseball paraphernalia, his background, and all of the slides on his history as a baseball player, and his political campaign, and the speeches that night, and put it together took 2 DVDs, but it's all on there. And I wanted to make it a special present to you tonight.
Thanks, John.
Now, the chances of me changing any minds in this audience are slim and none's left town. I learned that from Happy Chandler many years ago. But in case there's a few folks out there that didn't even know I was in the race, because that's my biggest problem when I got in at the last minute. Folks don't even know I'm in the race. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. There's some people in this room that have known me for a long time. Some wondered whether I was a Republican or a Democrat, or when I was either, or whether I was which. Well, I was a Democrat most all my life, and I ran as a Democrat most all of my life. In fact, this is my first time to run as a Republican, and I think I make a little history tonight by not only having won a statewide race as a Democrat, but coming back and running a statewide race as a Republican. Now, how did I come to be enlightened? Well, some would say it's enlightened, and some would say he's lost his mind. But years ago, when I was superintendent of education for the state, I never will forget, I met Bill Clinton, and my wife and I chatted with him up on the stage, and he was running for president. And I sat down at the table after that with the whole group that I was there with, and I said, that fellow's going to be president of the United States. And I told my wife, she said, how do you know that? And I said, because I've watched a lot of candidates in my lifetime, and I can tell you he's going to be president. Well, then all of the stuff came out about him and his background and his philandering. And while all of us, none of us are without sin in life, you know, we all make our mistakes in life, I decided that that's not the president that I want. And they called me up and wanted me to come to Frankfurt and have all the constitutional officers holders there as Democrats to endorse him. And I was the only one that said no, I wouldn't do that. This is the President of the United States. We need people of character and integrity in this office. And so I didn't go. I voted for George Bush Sr. I don't mind saying that. And later, I worked for a fellow by the name of Jack Westwood. And why did I work for him? Because Jack Westwood was running against a very tough opponent by the name of Joe Meyer. But Jack Westwood, I knew, was a man of character. I had taught school with him at Erlanger Lloyd. I had watched him deal with the students. And I'd watched him in his life. He was a man of character. Now, I will tell you this in all honesty, because somebody asked me if I'm a Democrat or Republican. I'm neither, if you really want to know the truth. I'm an American. I'm an American. And even before being an American, I'm a Christian. And I pray about the decisions I make. Now, I'm not in this race to run against anybody. I want you to know that. And that's from my heart. I'm in this race because God grabbed me out of the bed and said, John, the country needs to hear a message from God. And that message simply is this: we don't need to make a left turn, and we don't need to make a right turn. We need to make a U-turn to God and godly principles. This nation was founded by people who believed in God. And when the first president of this nation was elected, he took the nation immediately after being sworn in to prayer. To prayer. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, "Seek his face. Ask him for forgiveness of our sins. Change your ways, and he will heal our land." If we want our land healed, we've got to look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. Democrats, independents, Republicans, Americans, and see the real self that needs to change. All of us need to turn back to God. That's the only way we'll have a human right to life amendment. That's the only way we'll really have free enterprise. But never forget, free enterprise is the greatest system devised by man to make an economy grow. But it has no conscience. The conscience comes from us. Look in the mirror, and what do you see? Greed has taken over the country. All of our institutions, our government, we threw God out of our churches, we threw God out of our schools. We've got to turn back to God. That's the message. It's pretty simple. It isn't no big deal, and it isn't Democrat, and it isn't Republican. It's the Christian message. God bless you. Now, I get two questions, and I hope you ask them. And I hope you realize that if you ask them, I'm going to tell you the truth. You might not like to hear it, but I'll tell you the truth. Good Lord, no questions? I don't have to tell the truth. Well, in that case, I haven't made anybody real mad, I guess. Yes, go right ahead, ma'am.
What's the question?
What's the question?
That's a question.
Well, I guess the real question is probably on most people's minds is what I think about what happened yesterday. I think what happened yesterday was a sad day for the country, for both parties, and I'll tell you why. There's an old song sang by a fellow by the name of Kenny Rogers, and it goes something like this. You gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. You never count your money while you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. Now, why do I say that? Because I handed a list of 7 pages to Senator McConnell about 2 months ago. And I told him privately, so it wouldn't embarrass him, you need to work out some of the key things that we need in this bill before you back them into the corner like a rat and not leave it a way out. You see, I have been a member of both parties. I understand how both parties think and operate. And it was my contention that if they negotiated just enough to get tort reform, to get the abortion issue officially out of the language,